I move we excuse Kenny. I move we excuse Kenny.
Second.
Mr. Gorman made a motion to excuse Mr. Henning from tonight's workshop, and second by Mr. Merkel. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I also move that we excuse Tina.
Second.
And Mr. Gorman also motions that we excuse Ms. Kelly from tonight's workshop, and seconded by Mr. Bachman. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we're ready to start, finally. Sorry about that. And so...
Can we do a roll call for the
Oh, yeah.
workshop?
Sorry. Let's have a roll call.
Bachman?
Here.
Henning? Gorman?
Here.
Merkel?
Here.
Kelly? Lieberman?
Here.
And Stevens.
Here. And our two members have been excused. So will you tee this up?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At our last meeting, we had a brief discussion about electrical aggregation, and Rich with Energy Alliances is here to kind of walk us through the process of what that would look like for the city of Clayton.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me out tonight to talk about electric aggregation. My name is Rich Serace. I'm with Energy Alliances. We're an energy consultant just north of Cincinnati and work with some of the other communities up here. I received a phone call a couple weeks ago to ask about Energy Alliances and ask about aggregation, and I was then asked to come out tonight to give a little bit of highlights on that. So we'll go through that tonight and then answer any questions that you may have. So what is aggregation? It's the ability for communities to, put a buying group together to be able to go out and then shop for, whether it be electric or gas, for the citizens to hopefully find favorable terms and conditions as well as pricing than if somebody would go out and do it by themselves. We'll talk a little bit more kind of about that, but we're seeing that now where there are people who are shopping and they forget that they're shopping. And we're receiving calls every day, people who signed up 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they forgot, and now they're paying 12, 13 cents because things just auto-renewed. So besides just the favorable terms and conditions, it offers some security there as well. So who governs it? The Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. It's just not as simple as saying, hey, we want to do this. There's a process that has to go through. There are certifications, there are meetings, there are things that have to be voted on. So there are numerous steps that are pretty much managed by the Utilities Commission and by Ohio law to get to the point of having the aggregation. And then who can do it? Townships, cities, villages, counties, pretty much any governing body inside of the state can put one together. This is not a rare thing. From the map, if you will see, there are over 400 groups throughout Ohio that do it, obviously very much across the north, very much in the southwest. Some of those gaps there are where there are not investor-owned utilities. So you can only shop where there is an investor-owned utility, so whether that be AES, like here, Duke in the southwest, the FE utilities, and then AEP around Columbus in the southeast. So some of those gaps there just because they can't do it. But either way, this is not a new or rare thing. It's pretty prominent across much of the state.
400 customers of yours?
No, that's everybody. Yeah, we manage roughly 35 to 40 communities right now. So really, one of the main questions that comes up is who's eligible. So once we go through the process and we'll step through some of that timeline there, it comes down to, who would get that opt-out letter on what that's called. So those who are, really instead of saying who is eligible, it's easier to say who's not eligible. So those who are currently shopping with an electric supplier or a gas supplier, so if somebody has chosen to go out on their own and pick a supplier, they would not initially be eligible for the program. The reason for that is nobody knows the terms and conditions that that person agreed to. So because these are opt-out programs, If somebody has signed up for somebody else and you automatically pull them in as part of the opt-out, well, they may have termination fees. So the way that the Ohio laws are written right now is somebody who has chosen to shop on their own, they're not initially eligible to join into the program. Those who are on a percentage of income are also not eligible because they already have a special rate with the utility, but that's not to be confused with budget billing. So somebody who has level billing would be eligible. And then anybody who has previously decided to opt out of doing it, being part of an aggregation, they also would not be eligible. So whether that had been through a previous opt-out, and again, we'll talk about some of those details, or actually people can go out to the Public Utilities Commission right now, even people in Clayton, even though the city does not have a program, they can go out now to the Public Utilities Commission and say, if the city ever did one, I don't want to be a part of it. So there are a few different gates to go through to find out who would be eligible. One of the other big questions is, what changes or what does not change? Well, really, if we're honest about what it is, it's a financial transaction. The bills don't change. The bills would still come from AES. Really, it's just a line item on a bill. Right now, instead of paying AES's default rates, you would pay the supplier rate. So it's still a very seamless transaction as far as that's concerned, that really nothing changes on the bill, right? Except for a line item, but you still pay for there. One thing that does change is budget billing. So here, other utilities do, but AES is one that does not do the budget billing for a resident in an aggregation program or really shopping at all. So you could still do budget billing, but that would be through the supplier. So there are still ways to do that, and we will only work with suppliers who can handle budget billing for a resident there. But for the most part, for the average resident, nothing changes except a line item on a bill. So aggregation, we like to say it's beyond just the price, right? Obviously, price is a big thing. That's why you're shopping, and we're trying to be competitive with the utility rate. But it's also to give a simpler solution too, whether it be price, terms and conditions. We look at all programs that don't have any termination fees, so that people can come and go as they want. I mean, that's big for us. That obviously the financial risk for anybody is pretty minimal, because at any point they could decide to leave the program. It's also the ability, and we hadn't had a chance to talk about it, but the ability for renewable energy. We have seen a lot of communities that have either had it part of their main program or as an option for people to opt in for those who would like to pay a premium for that. And in many cases, it was a chance to actually get renewable energy at a cheaper rate than what you were able to do in the market. So, beyond just the price, it's a lot of things. It's the whole thing that kind of goes into the program to offer residents, something that, is probably better than shopping on their own, at least over a long term, as well as being able to give some stability. Because by doing multi-year deals, I think many of you will see, if you're still with AES, a pretty significant jump in your bill this month because of how the rate structure changed, and then how they're seeing a big jump where AES's rates went from roughly 4.8 cents to just shy of 11 cents. So it's a big jump there. And obviously being able to kind of work it all together gives some stability and gives some risk management, we'll say, to the residents and small businesses that are part of the aggregation programs. So what an aggregation is, it's a value add to the residents. It simplifies choice. If you go out to the Public Utilities Commission and look to see how many offers there are a lot. There are dozens. Do you want renewable? Do you not? Do you want termination fees? Do you not? 12 months, 24, there's a lot going on there. So, I'll say I'm in a community that does not have an aggregation, and we moved houses 3 years ago, and so I had to shop for myself. I'm in this business, and it is overwhelming as far as the choice to do. So, by doing the aggregation, obviously having it vetted by the community, having some of the terms and conditions vetted by the law director, it adds another layer to support the residents on being able to shop and maybe avoid some of the hazards that they get into by shopping on their own. And again, it's an option, right? So even though it's an opt-out program, it's still an option because people can opt out, right? They can decide to opt out now, opt in later, be in it, get out. So again, it is not mandatory. So again, it gives them flexibility to shop, but not being mandatory. And then when you decide to lock in for some length of time, it gives you some price certainty, because as we see again here in AES, the price has jumped a lot. So it gives you some amount of certainty for price for some length of time. What is it not? Well, again, not mandatory, right, because people can opt out. It's not always the best option for some residents, depending on the rate structure. So here in AES, those who are all electric homes, they get a little bit of a break in their rate during the winter months. That break this upcoming winter is not going to be as good as it has been in the past because the price is going up, but people should still know what they're getting into. So we like to look at it over, again, a 12-month term, that maybe there are times where that all-electric home may not save on the program, say for December and January, but over the rest of the months, they'll do fine. So, but, we still think that the residents should understand the programs and what they're either opting out of or opting into, and, see if that works for them. And it's not always better than, future market prices. It's a commodity, right? So it's, no different than us trying to buy gasoline right now. We obviously try to use the intel that we have on the market and what we see there to bring a comparable rate to the utility. But, if the market, say, would, collapse a year from now, well, the utility rate may be better, or there may be, other rates to shop for. Again, that's why there's no termination fee. So for some reason that the program is not performing as well, say 3 years out from now, than we had initially anticipated, again, very little risk because people could opt out. So I put together, based on, potentially putting it on a ballot and going through the process this year, just a sort of a timeline on how things look. So for this year, to get anything on the ballot, stuff has to be in by August 10th. And then we'll just, the election day is November 8th. So, kind of between that, there is education that has to happen. So that's where we can work with the city on whether it be educational pieces, whether it be meetings here, other focus groups. I mean, that's where we can help out and make sure that the residents are educated about, what it is that they could potentially be asked to vote on, because this does have to get voted on. So assuming that it passes in November, so I know a lot of big business doesn't get done for the last month of the year. So it's that point where we sort of finalize and work on the draft for a plan of governance. So that document that we'd be able to draft for you, it's sort of the boilerplate of how the program works, right? So it defines the opt-out period, again, who's eligible, really how you want to run this program. Our suggestion there, we've worked with some communities that want to, really kind of dig down into some of the details, and we say, keep it as generic as possible to check the boxes of the law, because we've had a community say, well, we want it to definitely say no opt-out. I'm sorry, no termination fee, and that's fine. But let's say somebody was able to offer you a tremendous price, and they said, well, the termination fee is $1. Well, if your plan of governance says you can't have a termination fee, you can't take that plan. So again, that's something that we can help the city draft, and we always say, keep it as generic as possible to be able to run the program. So, to start off the year, you do have to have 2 public hearings where you give the public a chance to, ask additional questions and/or speak their mind more about moving forward on that. That does have to get put into the newspaper. That's stuff that we can help with as well. We also help with the public meetings. Again, part of the whole process of making sure the public understands what is being asked for with the aggregation, again, after the vote. After those 2 public meetings, and they actually can be held the same day at different times, so it is pretty easy. The city would then adopt the plan of governance, and then we would file the materials with the Public Utilities Commission. So there's a 30-day waiting period there. So that gets us into March, really, at that point. During that process, too, we'll, after you're certified, we'll go out, we'll get the list from AES. We could then go out to bid and go to numerous suppliers to ask them to bid on that. We would then come back probably sometime, in April to give you our suggestion on, whether you should do something or not. And assuming that we do, there is, again, that 21-day opt-out period. So although the materials get sent to all those eligible residents, and they get 21 days to opt out. And if they decide not to opt out just after those 21 days, the supplier would then enroll them into the program. And based on this timeline, we would expect that people would see it likely on their bill starting in June. So even though the program could start probably as early as April or May, it's going to be that May or June bill where things show up. So, but really that first part is, is the ballot. None of this other stuff really matters, except if it doesn't pass on the ballot. So that's, again, where we can help put things together. We have a full team. We have people that have been running election issues for 20 to 25 years. So we can help with those pieces, give you stuff for the new. I understand you can't take a stance, but obviously information is key. Still about newsletters, postcards, social media posts. I mean, there's a laundry list of ways to, again, give education to the residents on the ballot issue and what's being asked there. And then, almost lastly, why us? Right, so we do have, a pretty rich history. We've been doing this for over 15 years for communities across Southwest Ohio and Central Ohio. We're a full service consultant, so it's not about us just coming here, getting you a bid, and moving on. We're very hands-on, or at least as hands-on as the city would want us to be. We take phone calls from residents in our office. They can call us, they can email us. We have chat on our website. We try to obviously give them many different ways to answer questions from the time it goes to the ballot all the way through the process itself. I mean, we actually like when people call us to either, to opt into the program, because we get a chance to talk with them about, are you with a supplier? And some of them say, well, I don't know. Well, we talk with them about what's on their bill, because you may have somebody that wants to switch into the program, and they may break a contract that they forgot that they had. So, we try to be very hands-on, with the program, if that's what is wanted, to kind of walk it through from day one all the way through. Some of the other things that we do, obviously, is the entire regulatory process of making sure things get filed with the Public Utilities Commission, make sure your certification stays up, handling any of the customer service needs. We do give quarterly performance reports. So again, it's not just about doing the program and, we'll see in 2 or 3 years when it's done. You get stuff every quarter to show you how has the program been doing. It keeps us honest, right? To constantly look at the program and make sure it works, or do things have to change. And it also helps us with some of the quality control. So because we're constantly looking at the data, we're able to see, are the residents being charged the right rate? I mean, we found a case with 4 of our communities last fall as we were running some of these performance reports that this was down in Duke by Cincinnati, that the supplier was supposed to make a rate change, and there was a hiccup with Duke. And there was 4 communities where that never happened. They didn't catch it, but we were able to find that in some of the quality control and programs that we run. Went back to the supplier. They admitted that it was a complete accident, and they ended up giving refunds to I think it was almost 15,000 customers. So that, again, part of what we do to make sure that the experience for the residents is good from day one all the way through the end. So I can leave you, with a few thoughts, and my thoughts are: get certified, right? At least go through the process of certification. Obviously, with the big jump in prices right now, I mean, your hands are tied, right? There's nothing you could do at all. But if you were certified, you at least would have had the opportunity to think about, is this something that we want to do? You don't have to do anything after you're certified. You don't have to do anything. So the city of Beaver Creek, as a city we work with, they've been certified for years, and they didn't do anything, and then finally got to a point where where the opportunity was right, and they did. So again, it gives you the opportunity to be a little bit more agile and to move when you can. This is your program. Right? So you control the program, whether it's us, whether it's anybody else, right, who helps you through this process. This is your program, so it should look and feel and act the way you do, the way you want the program to work. And again, don't just chase price alone. We obviously want to try to get the best and most competitive price, but there are other things that go along with it. Again, like those terms and conditions and some of the other fine language in the contracts that are here to try to protect the residents. So we want the prices to be competitive, but there's more to it than just price. I've said a lot rather quickly, so I will stop and pause and see if there are any questions.
You said in March you go out looking for a supplier. How many suppliers are out there besides AES now?
Well, so AES is the utility. So the suppliers we go for are those that can do third-party contracts. So we work with 4 or 5 of them, depending on how they're working at that time.
And you don't make the phone calls like we get all the time at home. If the city goes with this, you're not calling our citizens, telling, not you personally, sir, but your people, telling them that they should join in what they call scam calls.
Yeah, so one thing that we put as part of the RFP process is that the supplier has to agree to not solicit inside of the city if they have the program. So, so if supplier A wins the program, they may have a business as well that does phone calls and whatever else. They cannot do that at the same time that the program is running. We don't, it causes confusion when if you had the same company doing the aggregation and then something else.
I'm sorry, I have a couple questions. First, when you say get certified, what goes on the ballot? Do we select, like, let's say, do we select you and put on the ballot? Or is it just a general certification to do aggregate?
So the ballot is pretty much asking the residents to vote to give you the authority to really explore the aggregation program, right? To start to go through that process of becoming certified to run a program. So it's actually very, again, it's sort of general, right? You're not selecting us or anybody else. You're asking the residents to say, hey, give us authority to be able to at least look at doing this program.
Okay.
We should have been on the ballot before we have you here tonight.
We've seen it both ways. We've seen it both ways, where again, communities have done it on their own, and then they've called us after the fact, and there's others that we've walked them through the entire process.
So the second question I have then is, I understand you're a private organization. Is there also a public, SOPEC, I think it is?
So SOPEC, it's similar to us, right? So they are a consultant as
Yeah,
well.
I was going to ask what the
Yeah,
difference
so there are several like us. What you find with some of them, they use one supplier, right? So where they have different types of programs, but some of those other consultants will say, they deal with one supplier, and they sleeve all the business through them, even if it's part of a group. Where we do work with multiple suppliers, because their pricing, for each one changes here and there, and we go out to look.
So
at
it's
that.
really, we could get certified if we could get our, I'm not going to say act together, but if we could get it done before August 10th, we could get certified for the November election, and then we don't have to pick who we go with ever. But if we do, we have time to do that after the election.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what's, so after the election, you could be certified as early next year. And then, it would be in March that AES, so they run their auction once a year to set their price. So just around that time, we would know roughly, what does AES's rates look like? So if we came there and say the market bottoms out and the prices are super cheap, we may go through the process. We may even run an RFP, because again, you could do it without ever locking into anything. And we'd say, well, no, those prices are not as good as what AES can offer. Just stay with the utility.
And I lied about that being my last question.
Please.
So a couple other questions. One would be, if we don't get on the ballot by November, then the next possible election would be the primary
May.
in '23. And according to your calendar, we probably wouldn't even be able to get something up and running until the end of '23.
Till the winter. Mhm.
All right, so that'd be almost a year and a half away?
Yep.
Okay.
And then even, cost-wise too, it should be cheaper to do it in November than it should be for May.
So I'm going to try to make this my last question.
Ask as many as you like.
What are we getting ourselves into as a city? Do we have liability? Do we have to run this? What is it that we're looking at?
So as far as, I will look towards your law director too. As far as legally, you're helping put the program together, right? The resident, they are the ones that, in essence, have the final contract with the supplier. You may sign the contract to finalize the price, the terms and conditions and stuff, but the end-use customer, the resident, they're accepting the terms and conditions of the supplier. So from a legal standpoint, I believe your risks are very low. From an administrative standpoint, that all depends on how much work your city manager wants to do or wants to pass off. We have some communities where the community is very much hands-on. They want to take the calls first. They want to do that, and that's fine. And we have others that it feels as almost they have a line that it comes into the office, they hear the words aggregation, and it just gets forwarded to us. So as far as the workload, it depends on again how much your city manager and their team want to do compared to how much they want to push us to somebody like us.
I have one question on the setting up the program. So have you ever set up a program that would, like, let's say, keep your rates X percentage lower than AES's? Let's say, if they continue to go up, that our rates, may rise too, but it would always be lower, and vice versa. If they would go down, would we always be lower?
So we have in the past, suppliers, you don't see as many doing that anymore, or if they do, the percentages are really, really small. We're talking like 1 or 2%. You just don't find suppliers willing to kind of take that risk on right now, especially as volatile as the market is, because, again, let's say that AES is raised with 5 cents, and then the market climbed like it did now. Well, it may cost them 10 cents to serve that customer, but if they've guaranteed a % off, they obviously would take a very significant loss for that. So we just don't see many suppliers doing that % off anymore, or if they do, it's very, very small.
To me, that would, from a city standpoint, that would be more attractive, because then it would reduce our risk. Because I do see, like you said, you don't look at the price only. That's obviously, what most people are going to focus on. But I think that still, it still runs us a risk. We saw, I don't want to, throw other utilities under the bus here, but we saw the same thing recently with, like, internet access and things like that. Okay, we have a new company come in, and of course, it's all rainbows and unicorns, at first, but very shortly, it's really the same thing. And I don't think we should be running I don't think we should accept any kind of risk that without it being lower risk for us. We don't want higher risk.
Well, but even if you do the % off, you still do have higher risk, right? So you may save versus the utility, but in the case of, again, AES, if you were even 10% off, right, before, and say it was a 3-year deal, you would have been paying 10% off of 4.8 cents, and now you would be paying 10% off of 11 cents. So yes, it's still less than the utility, but it doesn't protect you from the volatility of the of the changes of the utility itself too. I hear what you're saying, right? A guaranteed % off, it guarantees that, right? But it doesn't come without the pitfalls of that too, as the utility rates move.
So I'm like Dennis, I have one more question. This will be my
That's
last.
why, listen,
Okay. So this is really elementary. I'm going to show my ignorance here, but so AES continues to bill, and we continue to use all the infrastructure of AES. So what is it that you do, actually?
what do we do?
When you say a supplier, what is the supplier actually doing?
So the supplier is really, at that point, they're the one going out, taking on the financial risk to offer the price to the residents, right? So they manage sending out the opt-out letters. They are the ones who would enroll the customers or drop the customers into the program. So, but they are the ones that are then sort of on the financial hook, for the generation portion of the bill is what you would be shopping for.
Anything else?
And I'm gonna follow suit and say I have 2 questions initially. Because I did speak to Beaver Creek, and they were, provides very good, helpful information. So, of the community cities who help, do you charge the cities for what you're doing? How does that work?
Yeah, so the city itself would not pay. We are paid by the supplier, so it is built into the fee. Yep, so, you would know upfront, what the entire price, is at that point, and our fee is built into that.
And then on the 21-day notice that you send to the eligible citizens, how do you determine who's eligible and who's not?
So we would get the list from AES, and that's where we would work with the supplier, and then there's those few criteria that we look through. So there's a column in the list that says, is somebody switched? If they are, they kind of come off. There are some volume metrics too, again, for the small commercial customer, but that's, we get the list of everybody in the city, and then it gets whittled down based on the several criteria on who is actually eligible. And then that would then become the mail list for the opt-out.
I was just curious, because that seems like a daunting task to me, but.
Yeah, and that's not something the city does, right? That's where, that's where we work with the supplier on that. And to give you some rough numbers, roughly 30% of the community shops right now. So you got about 60% who have done nothing at this point. So if on day one, we could assume that 60% of the residents would receive a letter on day one, with the other 30 having to opt in and later on if they wanted to.
I'm sorry, that raises
Please-
one more
please.
question. So if you shopped, and you originally would not be eligible, if you terminated that, could you then be eligible?
Yep. So then you can then opt in. So you would need to cancel that contract first with that supplier, and then you would actually go back to AES for 1 month, and then you would be able to get into the program.
Which raises one more question. Are you basically similar to a broker where you find the supplier, you get the supplier, and then AES, DP&L, whatever, transmits that electricity? Is that basically what we're talking about?
Oh, you're asking a much more in-depth, physics question at this point, but yeah, as far as how we are. No, so again, as we're certified, yes, we are a broker, right? But based on, what we try to do with the city, we look at more as being your consultant, for the whole thing. It's not just about us going out and getting a price, because if it was about just getting a price, you could go out and get a price, right? But it's all the other things that kind of come along with it, where, we look at more of it as a partnership to be your consultant with it, and brokering the deal is just part of that relationship.
Anything else? One last chance. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, I think that's it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming in. We
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it. And we will be in touch. Is there a motion to close the workshop?
Move to
Thanks,
close
Rich.
the workshop.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bachman to close the workshop, second by Mr. Gorman. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?